The night my husband humiliated me in front of his entire family, I smiled. Not because I wasn't hurt. I smiled because, for the first time, I knew exactly how I was going to leave him. My name is Claire. I had been married to Daniel for 7 years. His family had never really liked me. They thought I wasn't good enough for him. I wasn't rich. I didn't come from an important family. And I worked from home, running a small bookkeeping business. Daniel never defended me, but that night was different. We were celebrating his father's birthday when Daniel suddenly stood up. His mother looked at him proudly. "Tell them," she said. Daniel picked up his glass. "I'm done carrying Claire financially," he announced. The room went silent. I stared at him. He continued, laughing. "She plays with numbers on her laptop all day and calls it a business." Everyone laughed, even his younger brother, Mark. Then Daniel placed a folder on the table. "Tomorrow, I'm filing for divorce." My mother-in-law smiled. Finally. I felt something inside me break, but I didn't cry. Instead, I looked at the folder. Then I noticed the company name printed on it, Daniel's Construction Group. That company had been struggling for months. And Daniel didn't know one very important thing: the company wasn't actually his anymore. 3 months earlier, Daniel had come home furious. His construction company was losing money. A major client had threatened to cancel a contract because of unpaid invoices and accounting mistakes. Daniel threw a stack of papers onto our kitchen table. "Fix this," he told me. I asked what he meant. "You do numbers, figure it out." So I did. For 6 weeks, I worked late every night. I discovered something Daniel hadn't noticed. His company wasn't failing because of the economy. Someone inside the company had been moving money, thousands at a time. The payments were being sent through a small consulting firm called Northbridge Solutions. I recognized the name. It belonged to Mark's wife, Jenna. I told Daniel. He didn't believe me. "Don't accuse my family," he snapped. So I stopped arguing. Instead, I documented everything. Every invoice, every transfer, every suspicious payment. Then I found something even bigger. Daniel had personally signed several documents approving those payments. If the client investigated, Daniel could be held responsible. I quietly contacted the company's attorney, Susan Reed, a woman Daniel had hired years earlier. Susan reviewed my records. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Claire, if you want to protect yourself, you need legal ownership of your work." I asked what she meant. She explained that I had spent years helping Daniel's company without a formal contract, so we created one. Daniel signed it without reading. He thought it was just an accounting services agreement, but it gave my company ownership of the financial records and recovery work I had completed. And that was only the beginning. The next morning, Daniel expected me to beg. I didn't. I packed one suitcase, my clothes, my laptop, and the small red notebook where I had recorded every suspicious transaction. Before leaving, I placed my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Daniel looked confused. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere peaceful," he laughed. "You'll come crawling back." I looked at him. "No, Daniel, I won't." Then I left. For the next 2 weeks, I stayed with my friend Emily. Emily had known me since college, and she was the first person who told me to stop protecting Daniel from the consequences of his own choices. Meanwhile, Daniel started the divorce process. He also told everyone that I had abandoned him. His family believed him, until Susan called me. "The client has requested a full financial audit," she said. I already knew what that meant. Every payment would be examined. Every invoice would be traced. Every signature would be questioned. Susan also told me something unexpected. The company's largest client was considering terminating the contract, but there was one condition. They would continue working with the company if the financial problems were fixed and the person responsible for the accounting recovery remained involved. That person was me. Daniel still didn't know. He was too busy celebrating his freedom. Then, 5 days before the audit meeting, I received an email from the client. They wanted me personally in the room. I stared at the message for a long time, because I suddenly realized Daniel had spent years telling his family that I was worthless. Now, the one thing keeping his company alive was the woman he had publicly humiliated. The audit meeting was held on a Monday morning. I arrived 10 minutes early. Susan was already there. So was the client's financial director, Mr. Harris. Daniel walked in a few minutes later. He stopped when he saw me. His face changed instantly. "What are you doing here?" Susan answered before I could. "Claire is here as the financial recovery consultant." Daniel stared at her. "She doesn't work for my company anymore?" Mr. Harris calmly opened a folder. Actually, she does. Daniel looked confused. I explained. My contract with the company is still active. He laughed nervously. You signed that after we separated. No, I said. You signed it 3 months ago. Susan placed the original agreement on the table. Daniel picked it up. His face went pale. He remembered signing it, but he hadn't read the details. Mr. Harris continued. We reviewed Claire's findings. He slid another document across the table. The missing money came from payments approved by Daniel. Daniel immediately looked at me. You did this. I shook my head. I documented what I found. Then Susan opened a second folder. Inside were copies of every suspicious invoice. Each one had a signature. Daniel's signature. His brother Mark's name appeared on several invoices too. Daniel suddenly stopped talking because he realized this wasn't about our marriage anymore. It was about his company and possibly his freedom. Then Mr. Harris said something that changed the entire room. We have one final question. He looked directly at Daniel. Why were you paying a company owned by your brother's wife? Daniel couldn't answer. Mark wasn't at the meeting, but his name was everywhere. Daniel finally said, I didn't know about those payments. Susan calmly pushed another document forward. You approved them. Daniel looked at the signatures. I don't remember. Mr. Harris leaned back. Then someone used your authority without your knowledge. Daniel nodded quickly. Exactly. I stayed silent, because there was something he didn't know. 2 weeks earlier, I had contacted Jenna. I didn't accuse her. I simply asked one question. Why did Northbridge Solutions receive payments from Daniel's company? She panicked. Then she called me. For 20 minutes, she told me everything. Mark had created the consulting company. Jenna's name was only on the paperwork. They had been taking money from Daniel's company for almost a year. Daniel wasn't part of the original plan. But later, Mark convinced him that the payments were legitimate business expenses. Jenna had saved copies of their messages because she was afraid Mark would blame everything on her. I had those messages. I placed my phone on the table. Susan read the first one, then another. Daniel's face became completely blank. His brother had been stealing from him, and Daniel had unknowingly helped him hide it, but I wasn't finished. I looked at Daniel. You wanted a divorce because you thought I was useless. He said nothing. You wanted your family to believe I was the problem. Still nothing. So I'm going to give you exactly what you wanted. I slid one final document toward him. My resignation. Daniel stared at it. Mr. Harris frowned. You can't resign now. I smiled. I can. Then I explained the part nobody expected. My contract didn't just protect my work. It gave me the right to recover the company's unpaid client accounts independently, and the biggest client had already offered me a position. Daniel looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. You planned this. I shook my head. No. Then why are you doing this? Because you made your choice. I stood up. I simply stopped protecting you from it. Mr. Harris asked me to stay. He wanted to discuss the new arrangement. I agreed. Daniel left the room alone. For the first time in 7 years, I didn't follow him. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Daniel called me. I didn't answer. He called again, then again. Finally, he sent a message. Please talk to me. I ignored it. That evening, Emily came to my apartment. She brought takeout and a bottle of sparkling water. She knew I didn't want a celebration. Not yet. I was still grieving. 7 years of marriage don't disappear because someone finally admits the truth. I still remembered the good days. Daniel bringing me coffee in bed. Our first tiny apartment. The night we bought our first car. But I also remembered every time he let his family insult me. Every time he called my work a hobby. Every time I made his life easier while he took credit for it. The next morning, Susan called. Claire, the client has officially ended Daniel's contract. I closed my eyes, then she added they want your company to take over the financial recovery project. I was stunned. This wasn't revenge. It was a second chance. But then Susan said one more thing. There's a problem. What problem? The bank has frozen several company accounts. I sat up. Why? Because the audit found evidence of unauthorized transfers. Then she paused. And Daniel's family is blaming you. By Friday, Daniel's family had turned against me completely. His mother called first. You destroyed my son's life. I listened quietly. Then she said the sentence I had expected. You should have stayed quiet. I finally answered. I stayed quiet for 7 years. Then I ended the call. That evening, Mark showed up outside my apartment. I didn't let him inside. He stood in the hallway, looking exhausted. Claire, please. What do you want? I need you to tell the bank you misunderstood the payments. I almost laughed. Mark, I have copies of your invoices. His face tightened. You don't understand what will happen. I understand perfectly. He lowered his voice. Daniel didn't know. I know. That surprised him. I know Daniel didn't create the scheme, I continued, but he signed the approvals. Mark looked away, then he whispered, I can pay you. That was the moment I knew he was scared. I told him to leave. The next morning, Jenna contacted me again. She wanted to meet. We sat in a quiet coffee shop. She placed a small envelope on the table. I should have told you sooner. Inside were printed messages between Mark and Daniel. Most were harmless, but one message stopped me. Daniel had written Claire will never notice. She trusts me. I read it twice. Jenna looked ashamed. He knew. My heart sank. How much did he know? She shook her head. I don't know. I took the papers to Susan. She reviewed them carefully. Then she pointed at one date. This changes everything. Daniel hadn't merely approved payments. He had known about them at least 6 months before our divorce. And suddenly, his public humiliation of me made sense. He hadn't wanted a divorce because I was worthless. He wanted me gone before the audit reached the truth. For the first time, I felt genuinely angry. Not because Daniel had left me, because he had tried to make me the villain. Susan immediately sent the new evidence to the investigators. Then we waited. 3 days later, Daniel called. This time, I answered. His voice was broken. Claire, I need your help. I closed my eyes. What do you need? Please withdraw the evidence. I stayed silent. I'll give you the house, he continued. The car too. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then he said, just don't destroy my family. I answered quietly. Daniel, I didn't destroy your family. You did. No, I took a breath. You did that when you decided protecting your family mattered more than telling me the truth. He started crying. I had never heard Daniel cry before. Then he admitted it. He knew about the suspicious payments. He had discovered them 6 months earlier. Mark had convinced him the money would be returned. Daniel believed him. But when the company started losing money, Daniel became afraid. Instead of admitting what happened, he blamed me for being financially useless. He thought divorce would make him look innocent. I asked him one question. Did you ever love me? There was a long silence. Yes, I believed him. That was the saddest part, because love without honesty had still destroyed everything. I didn't withdraw the evidence, but I didn't try to destroy him either. I let the investigation continue. A week later, the final report arrived. Mark was responsible for most of the theft. Daniel had knowingly approved several payments, but there was no evidence he had personally taken the money. That distinction mattered. Daniel would face consequences, but he wasn't going to prison. His company, however, was finished. And then I received an offer I never expected. The client wanted to buy my bookkeeping business. The offer was enough to change my life, but I didn't accept immediately. I asked for one condition. I wanted complete control of my company. No family members, no husbands, no favors, just me. They agreed. 6 months later, I moved into a small office with 2 employees. It wasn't glamorous, but every dollar belonged to me. Daniel's divorce was finalized that same month. He didn't fight me over anything. The house went to me, not because I demanded it, because the court recognized my financial contributions and the agreement Daniel had signed. His family disappeared from my life. Mark faced legal consequences for the theft. Jenna cooperated with investigators and moved away. And Daniel, he started working for another construction company. I heard he stopped talking to Mark. Sometimes I wondered if I should have exposed everything sooner. Then I remembered that birthday dinner. The laughter, the folder, his mother's smile, and the way Daniel looked at me when he announced our divorce like I was something embarrassing he had finally thrown away. I didn't destroy him. I simply stopped saving him. A year later, I attended a business conference. I walked into the hotel ballroom wearing a simple black dress. Someone called my name. I turned around. It was Daniel. He looked older, tired, but calmer. I'm proud of you, he said. I smiled. Thank you. He hesitated. Do you ever regret leaving? I looked at him. No. Then I added, I regret staying quiet for so long. He nodded and walked away. That night, I realized something. The sweetest revenge wasn't watching Daniel lose his company. It wasn't seeing his family apologize. It wasn't even becoming successful. It was waking up one morning and realizing I no longer needed anyone's approval to know my own worth. And for the first time in 7 years, I was finally free.